got the address and like had them drop me off with my gear. I was like, hey, can you guys drop me off at this address? And they're like, what, is it some girl? And I'm like, no, it's just some friends. And I just got out of the van with my gear and I was like, all right, I'll see you later. I'm going to join the Swingin' Utters now.
Dude, I had no idea you played in the Swingin' Utters, man. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Is the one and only Marko DeSantis.
All right. Yay.
How's it going?
Happy, you guys.
How are you?
Oh man, I am just beaten down from a day of navigating Los Angeles, man. It'll do what it can with you, and I make it to this part of the day. This is the part of the day I've been looking forward to the most. Hang out with you guys. But I'm good. I'm rejuvenated. This is awesome.
Yes.
Except for I feel like my hat looks a little bit crooked. I don't know.
Kind of like I like.
No hat. Should I just like tease my hair and go like full LA Guns 80s style? Like
you gotta fluff from the back though. You gotta
like go for like the sort of like I still remember how to do this, guys. I was actually like, I was a kid trying to be like Nikki Sixx when I grew up at one point in my life. I know how to do this. Like, do it. What do you think? Should I do it?
Yeah, I like it. There you go.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. Yeah. So yeah. Anyways,
you're ready for emo night.
I'm ready. Oh no, I can't be ready for emo night yet. But yeah, so yeah, I'm stoked to be here, and I don't know. So what's the deal with this? I purposely don't like to like prepare with these kinds of things too much because then it's just not as organic. Sure. And as you can see, I didn't bring my hair and makeup team, so I'm just doing it on the fly. So people like
as is, bro.
So people chat in or chime in with questions, or we just hang out and then you put this on some kind of a thing archive where people can access it later.
Yeah, a little bit of column A, B, and C. And then we kind of like to just go with the flow. Like Ace and I prepare stuff, and then 50% of the time it goes how we want, and the other 50% we talk about random whatever. But awesome. The first thing I did want to ask Marko and Ace as well is how the two of y'all met.
Well, it was a romantic full moon evening, and Ace walked up to me with a bottle of Bordeaux. And no, I don't know. How did we meet? Like Warped Tour, maybe?
Yeah, I think, I when Kid Cadet had brought this up, I was like, I don't know that you'd remember. I only remember because, so I remember when Sugarcult was just everywhere, and I saw you guys at like Soma. Something like that, San Diego.
Yeah. We used to play Soma a lot.
And at some point, I became really good friends with Michelle Jacqueline, your merch girl.
Yeah, Michelle. She was our merch girl for like 6 years.
For forever.
Yeah.
And she became like my bestie. And so we were like going to Disneyland all the time and like doing like all kinds of stuff. And so I was just around. And so I kind of met you guys intermittently. And then I joined a band called Madcap. And then at one point we played together. And I think that was when I sort of met everybody in the context of like being not a peer, but like, every peripheral, right?
Okay, cool. And it's like, yeah, that's so interesting. Do you remember what show at Soma? Do you remember who else was on the bill with us? Because I remember almost every show we ever played.
If I'm throwing this out there, I feel like it was Death on Wednesday. I could be making that up. Yeah. I could be totally making
Jeff
that
Sines, who now lives in Dallas, Texas, is an amazing record producer and has an amazing studio out there called Modern Electric Sounds. He was the guitar player of Death on Wednesday. He would go on to start a band with actually Steve Marriott from the Small Faces and Humble Pie, Steve Marriott's son, Toby Marriott. And
I toured with that band.
The Strays, right? The Strays.
Yeah. I was in a band called The Stranger Six, and we toured with them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They were such a great band. Honestly, if you're out there listening to this, look up The Strays. I think you can find them on, all that shit, like Spotify or whatever. And they made such a good rock and roll record. And they just sort of like, it was one of the, they're one of a giant long list of amazing, trees that fell in the forest. And no one was there to hear it make a sound. They opened for the Cult, they opened for the Damned, maybe the Buzzcocks. And if you didn't go to one of those shows and see them open, then you probably never saw the Strays. But they were a great band. Yeah,
they were a fantastic band.
So there was no Bordeaux. That's what
No
I'm hearing.
Bordeaux.
Oh man.
But that
There was no
that
Bordeaux, but there was Death on Wednesday, which is another great band. I mean, this guy
great
Jeff's
band.
been in like all the great bands that you've never heard of that you should have heard of. Death on Wednesday, their drummer Jorma started a side project that evolved into what we call today the Bronx, the band The Bronx.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mariachi El Bronx and all that. And I think Jorma, I don't know who he plays with now. I know he's played with
He's
the Bronx
doing like
for a long time.
freelance stuff. He's like hired gun stuff, right?
Yeah, because he played with Eagles of Death Metal for a while. It's just interesting. You know, you see everybody just sort of start out when we're all just a bunch of kids, and then everyone just kind of grows up and gets in their bands. And here's Ace. One day I'm meeting him, and through Michelle Jacqueline and Madcap, and the next day he's literally playing guitar in not one but two of like the bands that I like. Pop my rock and roll cherry to as a child, like Faster Pussycat and LA Guns, which were like, it wasn't enough to just be like, yeah, Motley Crue and Poison and Guns N' Roses. You had to dig deeper. And those were the bands that were like, those were the cool underground bands, I would add maybe Jet Boy to it. But like those bands to me and my friends were just as important as anything else. I mean, the like ultimate for us was this band Hanoi Rocks. That got super cocked because of what happened with Vince Neil and their drummer, and but they would probably be the missing link through so much history. If they wouldn't have happened, so many things wouldn't have happened. But that's just part of the fun of this whole. I'm sure you guys can relate. It's like this whole idea of music culture is there's just so many like. There's happy accidents, there's tragic accidents, there's actual accidents, there's literal, but there's all these just confluences of events that somehow lead us to this just amazing story that unfolds over time. And it's so fun. It's worth sticking around for,
Sure. Well, like Bob Ross, I think they're all happy accidents, hopefully. I wanted to ask both of y'all, because I saw that you're a collector as well, Marco, and I know Ace has a lot of incredible pieces in his collection. I wanted to know if there is a piece that you guys both own that's the most sentimental to each of you.
Oh my gosh. Well, collector is kind of a euphemism for pack rat, but definitely have a lot of stuff. And everything I have, I've actually thought about starting like a Twitch. I don't have the discipline to do it or the patience, but starting a show like where I just like literally like show and tell stuff that I have, because I have like my main house, and then this is sort of like a little like, I don't know if it was maybe a garage in a former life that's detached and someone turned into a studio, and I kind of claimed it as soon as we bought this house. I was like, I get that to be my little,
man cave.
I don't want to say man cave because I don't think I've ever been a full on man. I'm just like an overgrown teenager. This is my teenage bedroom version, 10.0, and, but, I just have so many cool things, and they're all just like imbued with, with stories and memories and sentiment and vibe, and it just makes me happy. And I'm not a like materialistic person, like I just get like, things come into my life. I'm not like hunting for it on eBay. Like I don't want to buy something that's already autographed. I want to buy something and then get it autographed, things like that. But it's weird. Like I get sentimental, like this jacket, just some dumb jacket I found along the way. And I have other jackets. I can afford a jacket, but like, this is the one I wear. And it's like, it just gets imbued with some kind of like, I don't know. It just, it's sort of like, this sounds so cheesy, but it almost becomes like you're like the thing that makes you feel like you turn from Clark Kent into Superman.
Ooh.
I get that.
Like I used to have a leather jacket in Sugarcult where like no matter what I felt like, if I put that on before I played a show, I played a good show. And then I started just wearing it every show. You can see it if you watch our memory video. That's the jacket I'm wearing in the performance footage of our memory video.
That's cool.
Yeah, that is so cool. Well, I like the jacket. It goes well with the hat.
But what you really mean to say is that's pretty fucking crazy, dude.
Like, no, I think that's rad. I'm kind of the same way in a sense where like if I put on a certain like attire or like, oh, this vest looks cool. But if I have a really great show, I'll be like, okay, that's the vest. I got to wear the vest because if I wear that, I'll keep having good shows.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's probably something to that. There's probably, I think like athletes probably have, you see somebody like, who was saying this the other day? Like someone was like, you see an athlete when they're about to do like a free throw or something, like they have their weird little like their weird little rituals that they do before they do it, and then they tend to, it's like, who knows if it's like part of the process or part of like tricking themselves or part of tuning out all the pressure, but whatever works, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's the same with like wrestlers and their boots, but like you said, however it works to, make you play a better show or make you have a better day, wear the jacket, wear all the things.
I think little ritualistic stuff like that is kind of cool and sets sort of like us creative types or whatever apart. And even like LA Guns has a ritual before we go on. We have to do that like Woe Bundy. Like we all put our hands together like, oh, okay, have a good show. And if we don't do it, someone will at the end of the show be like, someone fucked up. And you know why you fucked up? Because we didn't do the thing. We didn't do the thing.
Oh, dude, that's so funny. We had something sort of like that. We didn't keep it up. So it was just sort of like an inside joke that kind of put us in a good mood before a show. But it's kind of funny to talk. I felt like it was bad sportsmanship to talk about this maybe 10 years ago, but now enough time has gone by and I know the guys in the band, so it'd be fine. But like this band we used to play shows with was Good Charlotte. Yeah. And it was just, they were like our friends, but we sort of will like make little like, okay, right. Like we kind of have our little things to say about them. And they had their singer was like really all about like Tupac Shakur. He's like, they're really into hip hop culture, but like, yet they played like pretty much like kind of pop punk. Mm-hmm. And like his old email address was like joelpock@aol.com. Like, Tupac, his name was Joel. It's not, I don't think that's his email address anymore, kids. And if it is, sorry, Joel.
Okay. Ace is on it.
And I know Joel and Benji are watching this shit. No, but what they would do before shows, they'd all put their hands together like that, and they'd go, G to the motherfucking C, biatch. That was like their thing. So we started doing it. We literally started doing that at our shows, but we would say G to the motherfucking C, biatch, because it's like Good Charlotte GC.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was like, no matter how, like, how it is. I mean, you're in a band. No matter how much you guys get along as friends, there's still those times where you're just like, oh my God, just like you're just around each other in close quarters all the time. And sometimes you just need that like that weird little thing that's going to kind of break the, like cut the tension or break the ice, or maybe there's something drama that happened at sound check or some crisis that's going on behind the scenes or some disagreement. And just having something like that before a show that's going to make everybody kind of laugh, even though you're technically laughing at the expense of another band. It just,
adds a little bit of levity.
This sounds so kind of hippie-ish to say, but like one thing I realized after doing this pretty much my whole life since I was like 14, which is like only a couple years after you stop like playing Legos and shit and being a child and playing like soccer or whatever you're doing. I eventually realized, I was like, holy shit, we play music. The button you push is called the play button, And so many people start, once you become a professional musician and you're like taking care of your instrument and practicing, and you like, sometimes you can take yourself too seriously. You have to remind yourself that you're playing music, and music should be playful and fun and joyful. And I mean, even if you're dealing with even if you're like Elliott Smith and you're singing about something really depressing, you're still playing with it. And that way you're kind of, when you're a little kid, you learn by playing. You play with things, and that's how you learn. That's how you learn how the world's put together, and you learn how to share, and you learn how to fix something. You learn how to be resourceful. You learn how to use your imagination, because you can't afford the Barbie dream house, so you make your own out of boxes, and you paint it. And, I feel like that's what separates musicians from other types of grown-ups, is that we somehow didn't throw out that baby with the bathwater. We sort of kept that playful spirit. And if you don't, I feel like you end up becoming kind of a trash musician, because you stop having soul, you stop having fun, you stop making it seem like it matters.
You lose the youthfulness that's behind all that.
You lose your edge. You lose whatever it was that made it cool. And I don't think that's a matter of how old you get. I think it's a matter of how serious you take yourself. I think you should take music, take your craft seriously to a degree, but not take yourself so seriously that you realize, like, at the end of the day, you're a grown-ass man standing on stage with tight jeans on, playing a fucking electric twanger. Okay?
Yeah.
No matter how much money you make doing it, and how, careful you craft your songs, at the end of the day, you're doing something that most people only get to like see from far back or dream about, and you kind of have to remember that and like enjoy it, embrace it. blah, blah, blah. Or not.
Truer words have never been spoken, though, because that's absolutely how I feel. I mean, that's what keeps us kind of perpetually young is creative types and artists, and especially in this instance musicians. It's like I'm surrounded by this is like my house is like literally what I would live in if I was like 14 or 17. It was like if I could be like, well, full of original vintage horror posters, and I'd want like a whole wall of records, and like I'd want all the toys I couldn't have as a little kid.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm the same way. I'm going to spare you guys to move the camera because that'll be a big train wreck. But like, I have I'll take a picture and send it to you. You can put it on the screen. Okay. But it's just like I have so much crap. But it's like it's so fun, and it's like I think that a lot of grown-ups conflate being grown up with not like being excited about shit that makes them stoked anymore, and that seems so silly. It's like why would you? It's like
in a way.
I mean, I don't know. I've like maybe I put some stuff in a frame now instead of just tacking it on my wall with Scotch tape or something. Yeah. I guess that makes you feel like a grown up.
Yeah,
but like,
that's the adult thing. Yeah. That's so, yeah. I love it. I love both of your perspectives, and I think like, Ace, I saw you play for the first time a couple months ago, and I think the reason why you guys were so sensational live, because LA Guns Live is like mind-blowing, is because you can tell how much fun you guys are all having up there. Just
as it should be.
Yeah.
Also, like, I think there's so much ageism in music, and you got to look at LA Guns and go, okay, there's people from like multiple generations in a band. You've got Phil Lewis, who was the singer of Girl, which was like a legendary, groundbreaking British band from the early days of the new wave of British heavy metal. You've got Tracy Guns, who was like, in the early iteration of Guns N' Roses and part of the whole early scene in Hollywood, all that. Then you've got Ace, who's, only just recently turned 25, let's just say, but from a different generation. And then you've got Johnny, and who's like from he was around when Elvis Presley was still around. Okay. I mean, by that I mean like the 70s version of Elvis. Sorry, Johnny. Yeah. I'm not gonna say you were around the 50s, but I'm just fucking with you. But you get people from different generations playing music together, and it works. Why? Not because they're all the same age, but because they're still all connected to the same like spirit of rock and roll, which does not vitality. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're Keith Richards or if you're the kid from like whatever I'm trying to think of some if you're the kid from like some band that's in their early 20s right now, you're still bitten by the same bug, and you're drawing from the same source of like this is fun and I want to do this, so it's kind of cool in that respect.
So talking about youthfulness and music and everything kind of leads me to what I wanted to ask you about next, was if you could just sort of tell us what was your introduction to punk rock, and then also the scene that you eventually became a part of.
Oh my gosh. Well, here I'm emailing you guys the picture I just took of my wall, so in case you want to show it later. Marco's Jive, we'll just call it. My introduction to the scene was, I was kind of lucky to grow up in kind of a relatively small town. I grew up in Santa Barbara, California, and Santa Barbara's like a stone's throw from LA. It's like it's 93 miles to be honest. It's exactly 93 miles from LA, so it's geographically close to LA, but like psychographically it's like 1,000 miles away. It's like there's no traffic, there's no billboards, there's hardly any crime, there's hardly any traffic, there's not there's no tall buildings. It's like this feels like a little village that's tucked between the ocean and the mountains. So while that to me right now, as I say that out loud, I'm like, God, that sounds like a place I want to go. Like literally, like right now I'm gonna get up and drive there and go have 93 miles away dinner. When you're a kid, you're fucking bored. You're like, this sucks. There's hardly any waves. There's hardly anything to do. Most of the places are 21 and over. And so you're kind of these it just kind of creates this culture of like feral kids, just kind of running around on their, riding around on their bikes because they're too young to drive, taking the bus downtown, skateboarding, just whatever you do. And you run into each other because you're the kid who happens to gravitate towards the record store. And you're like, I'm going to go to the record store and hang out forever. And that was kind of like a way of self-educating because, of course, I sound very like kids today, but like when I was growing up, we didn't have like resources. Like we didn't really have the internet. We didn't really have things like that. You had to like kind of fill in the blanks with your imagination. Like maybe you'd read an issue of like Hit Parader or Circus or Rolling Stone or Rip Magazine and go to a record store, maybe see something on MTV. And then you had to just kind of like create your own narrative of what you thought it must be. Cause you weren't able to just like, hey Siri, hey Siri, what's the influences of this band? Yeah. So you had to sort of figure it out by like reading the tea leaves. Like you'd read an interview with, like I said, Nikki Sixx, and he would say, oh, I loved Sweet and Mott the Hoople and David Bowie. And I'd be like, David Bowie? You mean the guy who looks like he's the character on Miami Vice with like the leisure jacket on singing Let's Dance on MTV? And the guy at the record store, of course, they had snobby record store clerks even back then. He'd be like, son, go over to that section over there and I'll show you who David Bowie is. And suddenly you're like, holy fuck. You find like Ziggy Stardust and Hunky Dory and like, Aladdin Sane. And you're like, oh, that's what they mean by David Bowie, you know? And then you bring it home and you listen to it. And of course, when you're young, you're like, oh, the production kind of sucks. It sounds really like garagey and I'm used to these glossy 80s records. And then it starts to like click and you're like, oh, I get it. This is really cool. And it grows on you. And then eventually you kind of like, it kind of like grows on you so much that you go back and listen to the records that led you to it and they suddenly suck. You're like, I don't really want to listen to this anymore. It's like once you the gateway drug leads you to the real drug. And once you find the real drug, you don't want the gateway drug anymore. Yeah. And then, you find like, okay, Mott the Hoople, what's that all about? And it's really confusing when you're a kid. You're kind of connecting the dots. And then it leads you to Aerosmith. And you're like, dude looks like a lady. And they're like, no, go back and buy Rocks and Night in the Ruts and, all those records. And like, that's what we mean by Aerosmith. Then you go back and listen to it and go, holy shit, this is so like, of course, anything that's old always seems kind of cool and mysterious because it's like from a bygone era. So like the fonts they use, the gear they're using, the clothes they're wearing, it all seems like this. It's very easy to sort of romanticize the past because it's already happened.
Of course.
What you start to do is go, God, I wish there was bands in my generation, like bands I could find today that are like, that have this kind of spirit, but are not like, old bands from the, like Led Zeppelin's long since broken up. All these the Rolling Stones are like, the Rolling Stones are like one of my favorite bands of all time. But in the 80s, they were like the dorkiest looking band you could see. They were in like parachute pants and like they were like dudes in their mid 40s trying to be relevant in the 80s, and it was just no.
It was not a good look. Yeah,
it was not a good look. Like wearing like playing like Steinberger basses. Like that was. And like they've since gotten cooler. And my theory with that is that their kids grew up and started to go, hey, you were a lot cooler in this area, Dad. Why don't you wear this jacket instead? Why don't you grow your hair a bit? So they're cool now, but in the 80s they were kind of dorky. So you couldn't really turn to those bands. Even Robert Plant was kind of dorky, like a mullet back then. Aerosmith was kind of lame. Everyone was kind of lame in the 80s who was cool in the 70s. So you had to go, well, who's cool in the 80s? And we all found Guns N' Roses. And that was like the watershed moment. Guns N' Roses was like, okay, this is everything we like about classic rock, about the music that we listen to when we're skating, like underground punk rock. It has the energy, it has the attitude of punk rock. It has the soul of classic rock, but it has the muscle of like modern hard rock. And it was like, there was the two records that, well, I would say like the three records that really like became our guiding light when we were coming up as kids was Appetite for Destruction, and then The Cult Electric, and then I would probably have to say Hanoi Rocks. you know.
Awesome.
And then, of course, we liked everything else too. We loved Metallica, we loved Slayer, we loved Poison, we loved it all. We also secretly loved Madonna and Duran Duran and Depeche Mode and The Cure and all that stuff too. But we just weren't allowed to talk about it because you kind of had, it was very tribal when you're a kid. You're not allowed to like. It's like you're either the goth kid or you're the Spandau or you're the ska kid or you're the metaler or you're the punker or you're the skinhead. Like everyone sort of had these, it's really tribal.
That's how I was an outcast in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, because I was like, well, I like the Beach Boys, but I like Testament, but I like Black Flag, but then I also like Carcass, but then I also like the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. And everyone was like, out. You can't sit with us.
Well, but the blessing of living in Santa Barbara was that there, you know, the kids at my school that were the outcasts, we just all sat on, it was like, I think it was the area where they let you smoke, or at least they looked the other way. And I didn't smoke cigarettes, but a lot of the people who were like punks and skaters, they smoked cigarettes. So we'd all sit there because that was where the neat, you know, if you didn't really fit in, that's where you went, to the front lawn. So it was like goth kids, metal kids, punk kids, skater kids, stoner kids, like kids that were too smart for their own good, like super intellectual, like kind of theater kids. And then kids that were like total like dropouts, you know, they were like, they weren't even going to the school anymore, but they'd ride their bike there for lunchtime, just like hang out. Yeah. So you had like every type of kid that was just basically a misfit. And there wasn't enough of us in such a small town to have like cliques. So we all just melded together. And as a result, we all got exposed to each other's stuff. And I got this like incredible diverse opportunity to get this like really diverse education about all types of music, and like sort of like relating to Ace, like not really, because I never felt like I belonged to any one thing. I never felt like I was like the like, I check all the boxes for what you would call a punk rocker. I check all the boxes for what you call a metal kid. I check, like, for me, it was like, well, I don't do all those things. So I guess I can't really qualify as an official person in that category. And I definitely don't only like that. And I like things that hates. So I can't be that. So I just felt like this flag without a nation, where I was like, I don't really feel like I belong anywhere. And a lot of kids in our town, it was just like, there wasn't enough when we started to like finally like stop being like fanboys, just going to shows all the time. And we started to like form our own neighborhood bands. Yeah. It was like, there just wasn't enough of us to like form a separate, like you couldn't find 4 kids that were into the same exact stuff. So you just sort of found other weird outcast kids in your neighborhood and just started playing music. And like, maybe your idea was that you were forming a band that sounded like this, and their idea that they were forming a band that sounded like this. And neither of you ever got there, but you landed here. And that's what created your, you know, kind of half-assed, crappy, scrappy band. But from that you learn. And I always say it's like you flunk upwards. You get so sick of like sucking all the time. Like, God, every time we practice, it takes us half an hour to get in tune. So let's like save up for a tuner, you know, and eventually you get a tuner. And then it's like, oh my God, we can get in tune now. And then you still don't stay in tune. So you learn how to stretch your strings. Yeah. And you're like, okay, now we know, now the annoying part of this is over because we figured out how to get past it. We can actually get to business of playing. And then you're like, man, it seems like our drummer is just like, his timing is not off. So then you learn better, and you just kind of little by little figure it out. Like none of us were really taking lessons. We were mostly just like teaching each other and kind of going, how do you get it to sound like, how come they can make it sound, or the older kids that had bands. We were in a town that had a lot of like local bands, and you would learn from the older bands. They would show you like, hey, borrow my amp and see how it sounds. Or, you know what? Your drummer needs to close his hi-hat because he's always keeping it open, and that's why it always sounds so messy. Like we just kind of learn from like and by older kids, again, I'm saying they're like probably 4 years older than us, but they might as well have been grown-ups. Because when you're like 13 and someone's like 19, they might as well be like 45.
Right.
You know?
Do you remember?
They've gotten laid, they have an apartment, they have a car, you know, they can vote.
Do you remember, Marko, do you remember Agent 51 from San Diego?
I do remember Agent 51. Whatever happened to them?
Did
they move to Santa Barbara
anymore? But what's that?
Oh, okay. I'm getting a mix up. There was another band in Santa Barbara called Agent 94.
No, not in Santa Barbara. From San Diego, there was a band called Agent 51 that you guys played with at least on one instance. But that was those guys were like that for me. They were like 5 years my senior. They were like one of those Soma bands that just played there all the time with like Swindle and Blink before they blew up and all that stuff. But I was like,
did you see Blink before they blew up?
What's that?
Yeah. Did you see Blink before they became big?
No, by the time I started going to shows, they were already I remember when the Damn It video dropped, because at that time I think I was going into Poway High. So I was going to the high school that the band was from. I'm an Angelino, but when I was 13, 14, my mom and my stepdad moved me to San Diego. So from 14 to 19, I lived in San Diego. So a lot of my sort of, like I said, Soma, a lot of when I started going to shows and like getting involved in the music scene, I was in San Diego. But no, I never saw them until they were already bigger than sliced bread.
Okay. I just remember like a lot of our friends, like the older the older kids were like, well, there was like the oldest guys were this band called RKL. They were like,
of course,
they were amazing. RKL, rich kids on LSD. So they were like the first band out of Santa Barbara that like, where we were like, holy shit, I can't believe this band that like has a record out is from Santa Barbara. And they weren't like famous. No punk bands were famous other than like the legends, like the Clash and the Ramones or something. But like, it was just like, whoa, there's a band that actually has something like pressed on vinyl and they're from our town. But like at that point, like none of us like went to school with them. They were all way older than us. So they might as well have been like Motley Crue. But like we found out they were from our town. We'd see them around at shows. You could go see them. They were nice to you and would talk to you. And you're like when you're like 14, you're trying to play it cool. You're like, yeah, dude, it's cool. It's talking. You like lower your voice to try to like hey, dude, it's RKL playing next. But meanwhile, you go home and you're like, dude, I talked to Jason Sears. Holy shit, he was like cool to me. And like, he said maybe our band could open for him someday. Like, it's just one of those things where like, it's kind of mind blowing, but it also kind of gives you permission to do what you hear you hear other people maybe who don't understand the people, who haven't been bitten by that same music bug where they're like, yeah, fantasy land in your dreams. It's like most people, when they're like little kids, you ask them what they want to do when they grow up and they'll say like, I want to be a movie star. I want to be a rock star. I want to be an astronaut. They always want to be something really extraordinary. And then as their life goes on and school gets into them and their friends get into them and they start to just look around, they start to like kind of lower the bar and they go, well, that'd be nice, but some of us have to eat. So maybe I'll just settle for a data systems analyst. You know what I mean? Like no one's a little kid going, I want to be the guy who works in the stockroom at Target when I grow up. Like, they're always thinking big and then they just get tamped down. Well, I think a few of us managed to somehow circumnavigate that and keep thinking like that, even though I'll be the first to admit it's completely fucking absurd and irrational. It's the craziest odds that you're ever going to have success in music. Music's something most people just do for fun. And we were just doing it for fun. And there was no part of us that thought I'm going to, do this for a living. And, I just don't think that was on the table. It was just like, this is a fun thing to do with your friends just because. And like, once we started seeing older kids in our town doing it and actually they weren't doing it for a living. These guys all still had to like have jobs when they came home from tour, but they were at least like going through the motions of making records and touring. It really made it seem possible. Instead of feeling like a fantasy, it became something that like, well, that looks like fun. Like another band from our hometown that was a little bit older than us, but younger than RKL was Lagwagon.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I remember Lagwagon, yeah.
Right, Lagwagon got signed to Fat Mike from NoFX, started a label called Fat Records, and he signed Lagwagon. And, to us, it was like a band from our group of friends in our hometown that like we have their phone numbers like in our address books. And they are literally putting a record out that's going to be distributed all over the world. And like, they're going to go on tour right now. Like that was like enough where you're like, they might as well be Guns N' Roses. Like they're so insane. They're from our town. So that gives you like so much inspiration. Another band from my hometown, to be fair, is Toad the Wet Sprocket, which is like more of a mainstream kind of mellow band, but they were kids in Santa Barbara. And so it was like, we got RKL, Toad the Wet Sprocket, Lagwagon from a tiny little town. We all went to the same place to buy our guitar strings, the same record stores. There's only like 2 places to go see concerts. And like most of us, you can only go to like a big show at the Santa Barbara Bowl or the big theater every once in a while. So you mostly just went to these tiny little like punk rock shows that would happen in driveways and stuff. And there was this little barn in town called the Red Barn. And I remember Green Day played there. They would come down from Oakland and play there before they were famous. Yeah. And like, you just meet bands from other cities and no one had a lot of money. They all had like thrift store clothes, like Hondos and Epiphones, like cheap guitars, Squires, and like they were driving themselves in an old, beat up van. And so there was never like stars in your eyes. Like you thought like, man, to be like Motley Crue or Guns N' Roses or Metallica is like a whole other thing. Like that still just seemed magic. But to be a band that could actually just like make up some songs with your friends and then haul your stuff somehow to a show and like set up your stuff and play a show, and then maybe even like record something or make some shirts and like drive to the next town and play a show. Like that seemed something that it was like actionable. Like you could actually do it. It wasn't like winning the lottery. It was like something you could actually put one foot in front of the other dude. So we all started doing that. And like our bands, like, again, there was so many bands from our hometown that just sort of did it for a laugh. But because we happened to live, a 2-hour drive from Los Angeles, eventually you play Santa Barbara in front of the same people. Eventually you started to drive down to LA and like try to play shows. And then we'd meet bands from LA and they'd be like, dude, and we'd be like, dude, you come play with us in Santa Barbara in front of our friends. In exchange for that, we'll come play with, put us on the show you're playing at the Viper Room or the Whiskey or wherever. And we'll come play in front of your friends. And like just sharing resources. It was like an early version of just social networking, it was just like, just staying on each other's couches, partying with each other's friends, sleeping with each other's girlfriends, sharing bass amps. And it just sort of worked out. And then everyone like, it's like, that's why I always talk, like I work with a lot of like young artists today. And I'm like, you can't look at the other people doing music in your scene or in your generation as like competition. You got to look at them as your collaborators. There's room for everybody. Fair. And if you look at like, in order for me to win, you have to lose. That's kind of a shitty energy because it goes without saying, they're thinking the same thing. It becomes this like kill or be killed, like really animal sort of thing. Did we freeze? We might have frozen. Oh, no. Anyway, yeah, you start to share resources and you're like, this is kind of cool. Like your success is kind of my success because if I come down, like you're playing a show, I'm going to come down and see your show and I'm not going to keep score. I'm not going to be like, I came to see your show, kid cadet. Now you owe me. You got to come see my show. Like, we're not going to keep score. But I feel like, and I know this sounds real like woo woo, but like, I feel like there's something like of that sort of boomerang karma effect that happens where it's like, I'm going to come down and see your show. I'm being the change I want to see. I wish people would come see my show. I'm going to come down and see other people's shows. I'm going to be the guy who actually shows up rather than the one that goes, yeah, dude, I'm going to try to make it and then doesn't show up. And I would drive all the way from Santa Barbara to LA and bands would be like, dude, you came? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you're fucking crazy. And I'd be like, dude, I came down to LA. You said you were playing a show. And then they would be like, dude, you got to meet my friend. Oh, dude, this is my friend. What's your name again? It's my friend Marco. You know how it works. And you just start meeting people and just kind of engendering goodwill. Again, not with this like scheming, manipulative grand plan to like take over the world, but just simply because what else are you going to do? Sit in your boring town and hang out with your mom, So I was like, I'm coming down here. I have friends inviting me. I'm going to go and see what happens. And of course, when you're a kid, you just like take it as now I'm all bougie and I'm like, okay, I have to get hotel reservations and make sure I get a nice, dinner. But back then you were like, hey, where are you staying? Oh, fuck, I didn't even think about it. Can I stay at your house? I'd be like, sure. And
next room on your couch?
Yeah, or just sleep in my car. Like, fuck it. Like, you don't worry about stuff. You just do it and like jump and the net appears. It's just that attitude. Little by little, that starts to happen. And I could fast forward a million years, but like I had been doing it for a couple years and had a band that started to get more promising. And then we moved to LA together, like when we all like these graduated from high school and I was younger. So I would like drive down from high school, and like my mom had a thing where she was like, the only way I'm going to let you do this is if you get like, you have to get like straight A's and B's. You can never miss school. So I was literally like coming down to Hollywood, playing like English Acid or Club with No Name or the Whiskey with my band, wearing like my hair with makeup on and the whole thing. And then like in the backstage, I've got like my geometry book and I'm like doing my homework. And then I'm driving back at like 3 a.m. after sobering up and like sleeping at a Denny's and then setting my little like Casio watch with an alarm. So I'd wake up in time to drive literally in my show clothes straight to class and like sit in the front row so I could be like asking questions, because I had to keep my grades up, because I was like, I have a good thing going here. And my mom like, no more LA. And like, you know, my band was getting looked at by record companies. One of the guys in my band dropped out of high school and just like pretty much ran away just so he could do it. So he was like, dude, we're not going to let the fact that you're in school slow us down, bro. Like, I'm all in. He already had a tattoo. He was only 16. He was like,
awesome.
And that guy now is the guitarist for the Foo Fighters, by the way. That's
my God.
So it worked out for him. I always joke the most successful person I know that I grew up with is the one that dropped out of high school. It's also the only person I knew that dropped out of high school.
Oh
so
my
kids,
God.
drop out. Drop out.
There's the advice.
Anyways, I don't know.
I was going to say, Marko, because what you were saying about like people tend to have like this competitive edge and everyone looks at everyone nowadays as competition. I always think about, and maybe it's like super corny now that I'm gonna say it out loud, but there's a billion stars in the sky, right? Like, you know, we can all shine together. I guess I'll never understand the idea of like, oh, just because Ace makes it doesn't mean Marko can or whatever. It's so bizarre to me. Like there's room for everybody, you know, it's just.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think so. I wish the whole world would think more like that too. I think
know.
we'd have a lot
How do
less
you
of the problems
manifest
we
it?
have. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, so, you know, so that's but it really does start to happen where you start to share resources and learn from each other, and you know, good stuff just starts to happen. But you know, I've also had plenty of, there's a lot of shit you can't control, and like I had a band, that band eventually fizzled out, and then I had another band called Popsico. Actually, we're just about to release our record, our long lost record. It's coming out on vinyl. Check me out. Just going for the shameless self-promotion.
There you go.
This record's coming out on vinyl in late April. So it's kind of rad. But this band was like going to be like the one. Like I was like, dude, you know, I've been working up to this, playing in kind of crummy bands, and now I'm finally in a band that feels like is a good band, like ready for the big leagues. And we were getting looked at by all these major labels, and their singer became a heroin addict and died in a car accident.
Oh God. Oh God.
And I was like, and the record's called Off to a Bad Start, and it came out 2 weeks before he died.
Oh
wow.
No, 2 weeks
goodness.
after he died. So it was like, oh my God. And I don't mean to like say it all quickly, like, but you know, it's been years, so I'm kind of like work through it. But after that, it's almost like a first love. You're like, you almost feel like, well, I guess that was the one, and I guess I'll never love again. And I sort of like spent a few years in the wilderness after that, and I did some different things, always playing in different bands. And then I started to just sort of like find bands that already existed that would find like be like, hey dude, you want to play? And I played with this band, the Guitarist, for a little while.
Yeah.
This year, Chris had just moved out to California, and the day he met me, he's all, dude, I got 2 weeks of tour dates, and I need someone to play bass. Would you play? And I was like, sure, you know, just I'll do it. You know?
Yeah.
And so I played bass, and then from that, I met the Swingin' Utters, a band from San Francisco.
I stayed with the drummer on my first tour when I was 17.
Greg, yeah, he rules. Yeah, Greg's awesome. Yeah. And so I met them just from driving up the coast. We would eventually play shows in San Francisco and stuff, and I'd meet them, hang out with them. And then I was in New York City at this guy, Jesse Mallon, who used to be in D-Generation. He had a club called Coney Island High back in the day in New York City. And they would bands would play there, and Me First and the Gimme Gimmes were playing, and Swingin' Utters were playing. So it was all my friends from like that Lagwagon Fat Records community. And we were all partying, and I see Swingin' Utters, and I'm like, I saw the guy playing bass, and it was this guy, Max. And I was like, Max, I thought you were the guitarist. And he's like, yeah, but our bass player just quit. So again, I was like probably wasted, and I probably just borrowed some girl's eyeliner, and I just wrote on a cocktail napkin, like, Marko, 805-683-2999, like my number at the time at my mom's house, you know, and I like handed it to him. I was like, dude, I'll fucking play bass for you. Call me if you ever need me, you know? He's like, but I thought you were in the Ataris. I was like, nah, I'm just doing this for now. I don't know what I'm doing, you know? I forget about it, you know, sober up, life goes on. I'm back on tour with the Ataris. We play a show, and we were at the stage of being a band where you play your last song and you go, hey, so it's our last song. We're going to be selling some t-shirts over there. We need a place to stay. So if anybody can like put us up for the night, you know, we'll give you a free shirt, like come see us. And so that's how because we couldn't afford hotels or anything. And the alternative was we were going to sleep in the van or roll our sleeping bags out and sleep on the stage of the venue where we played. Yep. That's what we did, you know? So this time we were like, dude, we're like an hour away from my mom's house. Let's just drive to Santa Barbara and we'll get a good night's sleep. My mom will make us breakfast. We'll get to take showers. It'll be nice. We'll do our laundry if we want, whatever. So we go to my house and I push my answering machine and it's like, hey, Marco, it's Max from the Swingin' Utters. Just wondering if you want to go to Europe with us. I know you'd said in New York that you would play bass if we ever needed somebody. And we're leaving like 10 days. And I'm like, holy shit. You know, like hoping the guys in the band didn't hear it. And I'm like, I call him back. I'm like, yeah, dude, can you like tell me which songs to learn? And like serendipity, I got their CD. I was sitting there with we had like a little mini guitar in the van that we would like just, you know, write songs with. And I'm sitting there like figuring out by ear the Swingin' Utter songs with like my CD Discman, you know, figuring out the songs. And then as soon as the tour ended, the tour that we were on ended in San Francisco, I literally like got the address and like had them drop me off with my gear. I was like, hey, can you guys drop me off at this address? And they're like, what, is it some girl? And I'm like, no, it's just some friends. And I just got out of the van with my gear. And I was like, all right, I'll see you later. I'm going to join the Swingin' Utters now.
Dude, I had no idea you played in the Swingin' Utters, man. I had no idea.
Yeah, for a minute. It was a minute. I knocked on this door in like the Hate District. And I'm like, it's some girl with like covered in tattoos, answers the door, and she's just like, what? I'm like, hey, Marco, you know? And she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, Max said I was supposed to play bass. She's like, hey, it's Max's friend. You know, oh, he's not home right now. You come in if you want. So it was so awkward. And I'm like sitting there with my bass and my suitcase, just all, what am I getting myself into? You know?
Yeah.
Like I'm all the way in San Francisco. My ride back home just left. So now I'm like, you know, did I quit the band? I don't know, you know? And then eventually Max shows up. He's like, yeah, dude, the thing is we don't have you know, our drummer actually is like hanging with his girlfriend tonight. So we're not going to rehearse after all. And I'm like, but don't we leave in like 2 days? He's like, yeah, we'll rehearse tomorrow night. So then I go to, you know, we're hanging out, drinking and hanging out. And the next night comes around. It's like, yeah, you know what? Our singer's just like trying to like, he's not really feel like singing and we can't get in touch with our guitar player. So we're not going to rehearse tonight either. And I'm like, I don't even know these guys. I sort of know Max. I sort of like learned these songs a little bit. I don't know if I learned them correctly. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And then the like night before we woke up first in the morning to leave, we finally got together and like ran the set like once. I'm like, holy shit. So I'm like on the plane all the way to Europe, listening to the CD and like trying to make myself like cheat sheets. And I get to Europe and it's like 48 shows in 50 days.
Yep.
The craziest tour to this day, craziest tour I've ever been on in my life. We shared a bus with No Use for a Name, and the guitarist of No Use for a Name. If you guys are following all this, if you haven't tuned out yet,
I already know. I already know all this anyhow, but go ahead.
You know this. Okay, so Chris Shiflett, who I said I grew up playing in a band with, and then he had moved up to San Francisco and joined No Use for a Name. And of course, a few years later, he would quit No Use and join the Foo Fighters. And he's been the guitarist of the Foo Fighters ever since. In the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We're both in Europe for the first time ever on tour together in the same bus. And like, just like, dude, this is so rad. Like at that point, I'd like died and gone to heaven. I was like, this is as good as it gets. I'm in a tour bus. I'm in Europe. I'm playing in a punk band. Every night is sold out with kids there. It's so fun. Just like, you know, it took me like a week of shows before I realized that I could hand my bass to a guy who was going to put it away for me and like change the string. I was so used to doing everything myself. And one day I was like, can I give this to you? He's like, I thought you'd never ask. Like he was kind of stoked that I was like being self-sufficient, but he was actually working for us. So people were asking for my autograph and I'm talking to people in Europe and having this, I was just like, this is so fun. I've never like, for the first time ever, I kind of felt like a rock star, you know, even though it was like, we're like opening for No Use for a Name at punk shows, but I felt like, wow, I'm in another country and I'm playing shows. This is amazing. And then I got home from that and I was like, you guys, so they offered me to join the band. They were like, dude, thank you so much. That was awesome. And after that whole tour, not that I was doing it for the money, but there was like no money left over. I realized like, wow, that whole tour went by and like all that 48 shows and like, I don't know, maybe they gave me like $40. I mean, of course I was eating for free and drinking for free and, you know, I didn't have to pay any of my own. I got a plane ticket for free, but I didn't actually make money. I didn't really care about money or need money at that stage of my life because I was just so used to being just seat of the pants, kind of starving musician. But I was like, they asked me to join the band, and I was like, okay, but they're like, but there's a but. The but is we're just about to make a record, and we've already promised 2 guys that they could play on the record. It was they promised the bass player of Social Distortion at the time, and someone else. And they're like, so you won't get to play on the record, but you'll get to be in the band and do the tour. And I was like, from getting to know them, I was like, this band's already been around for like 10 years. I'm going to be like the stepmom that doesn't even get to like have a kid with them, you know? And I just was like, I don't know if
I've
that's
turned down gigs for that same reason.
Yeah. So, and it was weird because at the time I was like, oh my God, this felt like I made it big. But I was like, I had this epiphany where I was like, I don't think this was really fun and I love these guys, but I don't, I feel like I need the satisfaction of and the pride of ownership of feeling like I'm giving an autograph because I was part of building something, not because I joined it. Not to, you know, there's not, I mean, it's funny because at this stage of my life, I'd be delighted if the phone rang and someone said, you want to join my touring band? I'd be like, hell yeah, when do we leave? Because it's a pain in the ass to have your own band.
Which record were they about to go make?
They're about to make 5 Lessons Learned. So
oh my God, that record.
Yeah. I know. It's a great record.
That's such a great opening riff too.
So good. So good.
I love that album.
So, but you know, they all were having financial problems. I was like, this isn't like, I'm going to struggle even more than I've been struggling as a local musician. And I'm going to be in a band that has records out. And it just didn't seem like there was I was like, I don't think I can do it. Yeah. I was just like, you know what? I want to, and at that point in my life, I think I did one other gig. I played in my friend's band Nerf Herder for just like a tour because they needed somebody. And then I just had this weird epiphany, and I promise I'm trying to make a long story short, you guys. But like, because people are probably here because they're like, weren't you in the band Sugarcult? But like, there was a whole, Sugarcult was a weird thing because it was a Hail Mary at like the shot clock of my rock and roll journey, which was so weird because I had like done these things, had this band and had other little like touring gigs. And then I was just like playing other local bands and nothing seemed to stick. Couldn't get anyone to like, never felt like anybody was as into it as I was. And I'd already sort of tasted what it was like to be on the road and be like in a pro band to some degree. So I was like back in my small town and I was like, this is kind of, I remember verbalizing, I was like, I'm just kind of done with this whole, like, maybe I'm just done. Maybe I just need to like, maybe I'm just trying too hard. You know, maybe I'm just looking. It's like when you're looking to get laid, you never get laid. I'm like, maybe I'm just trying too hard and I just need to like cut the bait and just start fresh with something else and just see what happens. And just when I was saying that, I ran into this like brand new like trio that had just formed at like the community college in Santa Barbara. And I saw them on their first show ever because they were opening for Super Drag, because Super Drag was a band from Tennessee that we loved, but they like were just about to get dropped from their major label. So they had like no tour support. So they were they were playing shows. They were kind of like riding out the lease and just playing shows to support their record as much as they could, but they couldn't afford to have opening bands. So they were just like, hey, who's a local band that wants to like, they didn't ask us to buy onto the show, but they say, if you want to play the show, we can't pay you, but you get a drink ticket. And so band I was in at the time got the show, and these other 3 kids got on the show, and I watched the kids when they played, and it was their first show ever. And the singer was this guy Tim, bass player was this guy Aaron, the drummer was this guy Ben, and that was Sugarcult. And they were like, we'll just call ourselves that for this show. I don't know. They weren't even like a real thing. And then me and the singer hit it off. I happened to be wearing a jacket that he liked, and we were like talking about clothes and talking about records. And it's kind of like in a really weird, like, I don't know, it was like a bromance. Like we got each other's numbers and then we'd like talk on the phone and talk about music all the time. We just kind of like, there was a weird like, man, I wish I would have met you a month ago before I told this other guy he could play bass, you know, because at the time I was playing bass. And then we kind of kept in touch. And one day he called me up. He's like, dude, I feel like we need another guitar player in this band. Do you think you would ever want to try playing guitar? And he didn't know this, but I actually started out on guitar when I was like my first band ever, almost on guitar. And I always had a guitar around. So I was like, sure. Yeah. Fuck yeah. That sounds like fun. And it was just what I needed because I was so like defeated from like years and years of like hitting my head against the wall with my bass, trying to make something happen and not getting something off the ground. And I was like, the novelty of playing a different instrument and hanging out with this new group of friends just is like, that's enough for me. Like, that's all I expected was like, I'm going to get together with these guys when I get home from my job at the record store, and I'm going to jam with them. I'm going to get better at guitar, and I'm going to figure out what the hell I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And then all of a sudden it was like, I got on a train, and we played a local show. No one cared. We played another local show. No one cared. Then people started to care. Our show started to be the show people came to in town. We started to become the big fish in the small pond. We started to bleed over to LA and getting gigs down there. Labels started to check us out. Other bands started to invite us. It just never, like, it went for like almost 10 years straight on an uphill climb. It was insane. Like, we got signed 2 years later. We had a hit song. We had another hit song. We had another hit song. We had a song that was a hit earlier become a hit again because it was in a movie. Then we got to make another record. And while we were making the second record, our first record took off in Europe and Japan. So we started to suddenly go international and fly over to Japan and have like our record come out like as if it was new all over again, like 2 years after it had originally come out. That was our record, Start Static, Bouncing Off the Walls and Stuck in America and Pretty Girl. And then we made another record called Palm Trees and Power Lines and it had the song Memory on it. And that became a giant hit and got played on MTV and started to like go from like the smallest stage possible on the Warped Tour to the next smallest stage to the main stage. And then from that tour, when we were on the main stage, we got the call from Green Day that it was like, basically the band was having like a coin toss between us and Alkaline Trio to open for them on their new album's tour. That new album would be American Idiot at the time. That's how long ago that was. And we won the coin toss. And, and it was like, okay, we get to go on tour opening for Green Day. I mean, it's probably like our singers like used to have posters of Green Day on his wall when he was a kid, and that just like boosted us to this whole other level. And we got to tour with Blink-182 and tons, and we get to do our own headlining tours. We just had a really good run for a really long time and made another record called Lights Out. And, then little by little things started to sort of slow down and for a million different reasons. And yeah, it was quite a wild ride. So it's that weird day is darkest before the dawn story. I thought my whole musical journey was over. And then I started jamming with these guys and it was like, never looked back for like, 12 years. Now it's crazy.
And I was going to say good things happen to good people too, and you're good people. And so I'm so happy to like hear all that stuff, but sorry to Alkaline Trio that they didn't get to tour with Green Day. So you'll get them next time, Alkaline Trio.
Well, things worked out okay for Alkaline Trio. And by the way, like if you really want to geek out, the band that was on that tour with this No Use and the Swingin' Utters, that European tour, the opening band for that was a band called Suicide Machines, and the drummer of Suicide Machines was Derek, who would go on to be the drummer of Alkaline Trio. So for the nerds out there that like to geek out on those little connections, there you go. Future Sugarcult, Foo Fighter, and Alkaline Trio all in the same tour together.
Oh my God. So, okay, Marko, we're going to like do a pretty big pivot, if this is okay with you. So
totally fine. I think I covered all the bases.
Okay, we did. And then, so after we played this game, because we're going to play a quick game, then we can talk emo night and all that stuff, if that's okay with you.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so we have a game. We have a game of Would You Rather. There is no wrong answer. So whatever you pick is correct. Okay? So here we go. Here's the first Would You Rather. Okay. Would you rather perform with the first musician or band that you ever saw live, or perform with the first musician whose album you purchased?
Oh my gosh. I think I would have to say perform with the first musician whose album I purchased, because that would be AC/DC for those about to rock. We salute you.
Well, okay. Amazing.
Although I bought it on cassette, to be fair. So it's not that cool.
Cassette is fine. We love. Okay. Ace, do you want to read the next one?
Sure. Would you rather switch set lists with the Foo Fighters or switch set lists with Kiss?
By switch set list, you mean like you play their set on stage?
Yeah.
Oh, Kiss, 100%. No offense to the Foo Fighters, but I bet you, knowing the Foo Fighters, at least most of the Foo Fighters, they would answer it the same way.
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Here's the next one. This is for both of y'all, okay? Would you rather compete with Ace on The Floor is Lava or compete with Ace on The Amazing Race?
Ooh, the floor is lava sounds like fun. Do we have to do this with our clothes on? No, I'm just joking.
That is optional.
If I wanted to win, I would probably do the Amazing Race because I've like gotten into running over the years and I've like run a few marathons and stuff. So I feel like a little more authority running the Amazing Race. I feel a little more competitive.
Ooh, okay.
Floor is lava. It's very tempting though. Maybe naked and maybe not with Ace, but maybe with like, some other friends. Maybe with like Dua Lipa and Katy Perry and I don't know, Ariana Grande or something. I don't know. Yeah.
Fun. Okay. Clothing optional, I suppose. Okay. Ace, you're up.
Would you rather listen to show tunes for 24 hours straight or listen to sea shanties for 24 hours straight?
Is that like going on the flogging Molly cruise or what?
Basically, yeah.
Okay. Man, I would be sitting there pretending I was listening to both of those things, but I'd have my AirPods in and be listening to past episodes of Talkulture instead.
Oh, so smart. Great. Okay. Fair. Okay. Here's the next one. Would you rather write a concept album based on Warped Tour or write a concept album based on Emo Night?
Ooh, let's see. I mean, I don't know. I feel like the concept album might be a double gatefold and have Warped Tour as the forebearer, the grandparent of what would become Emo Night. I don't know. I think I'll go with the concept album based on Emo Nights because it's just such a phenomenon. It's such a weird, unusual phenomenon that has, I think, like so many things, you start out with a certain set of intentions and then it spirals upwards into its own, like, kind of like amazing thing that becomes bigger than you ever could have imagined. Like the idea was originally like, hey, let's get together with some friends, listen to Taking Back Sunday and My Chemical Romance and Blink-182 and drink some beers. And then what happens is it turns into almost a genre in and of itself. And you get like Demi Lovato making a rock record and Machine Gun Kelly collaborating with Travis Barker and making it like emo trap records. And you get all these weird things that probably wouldn't have happened had Emo Night not come along and reintroduced it into the culture. Because it was kind of seen as like almost like 80s metal was seen for a while, right? Like there was like no one would admit they used to like, anything from the 80s. And then it was like, are you thinking what I'm thinking? Yeah, I know. I kind of miss that too. And then all of a sudden it's like, dude, this is so fucking dope. Like it's weird how that happens. People love something and then they're almost embarrassed to admit they ever liked it. And then eventually they go, you know what? Fuck it. I don't care. It's all
like
good.
It. And we're proud of
it. The music is like our time machine back to like, I love the scene in that movie High Fidelity, which was also a great book, where he says my records aren't in alphabetical order, they're in autobiographical order.
Ooh, and great film.
There's no shame in any music you like. It's all part of who you are. It's badass. It's going to evoke memories and hopefully create new memories too, which is super rad. I have to say that because my band at this point, like we just celebrated the 20-year anniversary of our first record. So I have to sort of get on board with that line of thinking. Otherwise I'm like, hey, you want to buy this record that is older than you? So yeah, there's value.
Nostalgia is a real thing though.
Yeah, of course.
It's fucking cool though. You could literally, like, none of us were around when the Beatles were around. And all of us could listen to a Beatles record after this and be transported back to like a time period that we weren't even there for, and like see what it sounded like, see what it looked like. I watched that Get Back thing and I was like blown away by, it's kind of weird to watch, but it was like, I was blown away by what they were wearing. They were all like reading newspapers and smoking cigarettes constantly. Like if you saw that today, it'd be a bunch of people like with vape pens and a phone. But like you see, like that's what it was like to be like in your 20s in England in the 60s and be an artist, the gear they were playing. It's like you would, it's so cool.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That's no different than what we're doing. No different than this. Any band that's happening right now, artists happening right now, 50 years from now, people are going to be like, it's going to be like wow, look at this like time capsule, you know?
And we just have to hope that Peter Jackson wants to make a documentary about it. So
So maybe Peter Jackson's grandkids will do it. You know?
yeah, exactly. A challenge for them. All right. Ace,
All right, let's
you
keep
read
going.
one more and I'll read one more.
Okay. Would you rather wear a zoot suit on stage for your next performance, or wear a comically large hat on stage for your next performance?
I'm like, you mean dressed like Sugarcult? Let's see. I would, man, I don't know if I could pull off a zoot suit. I do like those shoes. Those are fantastic shoes.
They're fun. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe a comically large hat. But you know, there's no one's allowed to wear a comically large hat anymore because you'll just be seen as trying to rip off Slash.
Ooh,
You know,
fair. Fair.
or maybe like Pharrell Williams or something. I don't know. But yeah, I guess a comically large hat. I'm a hat guy. I always like having hats. You know,
Okay.
it's fun. Like hats are like my little security blanket. So maybe I'd go with a hat. Although I will steal the shoes from that zoot suit.
You're allowed. You're
Okay.
allowed. All right, here's the last one. Okay. Would you rather go back in time and spend an evening with the Rat Pack, or go back in time and spend an evening with the OG Hollywood vampires?
Oh my God. I mean, I don't think there's a. Can I check all of the above?
Sure.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what though? I will say, I mean, the Rat Pack looks like fun, but I have a feeling in that situation, the romance of it is probably a lot more fun to imagine than the reality. If you were there in reality, it's probably like pretty misogynistic and racist and like, you know, I don't know. I don't know if I could, I don't know how much I would have to talk about, but if I could go back and hang with like, who is that? Like Harry Nilsson, Alice Cooper, Mickey Dolenz, John Lennon, and who's the girl? Is that God, she almost looks like the girl. She looks too old in this picture to possibly be that girl, but she almost looks like the girl who was on that TV show called One Day at a Time with Schneider, with the janitor who wore like the denim outfit. She almost looks like her, whoever that is.
It's a singer. I forget what her name is. Because I remember there was a story with like Shep, and he brought her into the group, and it got her a lot of notoriety. But I don't remember who it was.
She's kind of cute. Like, yeah, you know what? I'll hang out with the Hollywood vampires, especially if it means I could swoop in on Mickey Dolenz's date that night. And I'll grab Alice Cooper's Tall Boy. I will grab Nilsson's joint, and I'll grab Mickey Dolenz's date and John Lennon. I don't know. I'll just we'll go off into the evening and have a wonderful time. It'll be great. Yeah.
Amen.
That looks like fun.
So fun. Oh my gosh. Same. Alice Cooper is like one of my favorite humans of all time. So anything with him, I'm in. I got
to meet him once, and he was super, super cool. I got introduced to him by that guy. I think he might be in Faster Pussycat now. Ronnie Simmons, an Australian dude who plays guitar. I met him at something, and he was like, "Hey mate, you want to come to this thing? And like, it's like this Johnny Depp and Alice Cooper and all these people are gonna play." And I just kind of tagged along with them to it. And
I was the DJ at that.
You were? It was like during NAMM or something.
Yeah.
And I got to meet him, and it was one of those things where I thought it was just gonna be like, "Hey, dude, can I just get a selfie? Thank you so much. Oh my God, you're Alice Cooper." But he was like the coolest guy, and he was with Robbie Krieger from The Doors. And as much as I was fanboying out about Alice Cooper, he was fanboying out about Robbie Krieger, and I got to see, and somehow I just got to stand there awkwardly in their conversation, and they were talking about like the '60s and Sunset Strip and the whiskey back in the day and the riots on the Strip, and I was just like, as a music geek, I was like, this is so fucking mind-blowing. We talked about memories. We talked about being a collector earlier. I would say of all the records I have and like toys and just random rock and roll refuse, my biggest collection that is like the most passionate about collecting is memories.
For sure.
You know, and I know that sounds kind of corny because our band had a hit song called Memory, but like to me, like, fuck, I wonder if I can find it real quick. Can you guys give me 1 second? I'm gonna find this.
Yeah. And while you're doing that,
I paraphrased it in this book. There's a little book that comes with Popsico's record, and I paraphrased it because I had to write the foreword for it, and I didn't ask his permission. So Richard Hell, if you're out there, please be cool and don't sue me. But Richard Hell wrote this great book called Go Now. Richard Hell, you know, is from like the New York City punk rock scene. He was, Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers. He was originally a Heartbreaker. He was in the television, and he had his own thing. He's a badass from that scene, which I've always been obsessed with. But he's not as good of a musician as he is a writer. So listen to this. This is from his book, Go Now. Memories are better than life. Nothing I'm part of is good until later. I make decisions on the basis of sensing what will produce the best memory. They're my finest works. Everyone is the poet of their own memories, but like the best poems, they're never really finished because they gain new meanings as time reveals them in different lights. Maybe the best ones are all the same, of being born or dying or whatever it is. I mean, come on. How fucking profound is that shit right there?
Ooh, in the feels. Yeah.
Like, it's so true. It's like memories are like it's like if you have the option to turn right and just do something mundane, or turn left and do something awesome that's going to yield a rad memory. It's like, just keep turning towards the memory. Take the scenic route, you know, like, you know how the fucking story ends, right? you know, like, no one we're all going to die one day. So you don't want to die with a thin autobiography. So it's about like doing rad things, taking the adventurous route, taking chances, not always taking the most, like, you know,
safe,
not always doing the path of least resistance. And I think that's like kind of like, that's what all this shit's about, you know?
Amen. Preach. And I think we've also collected a couple dogs in the meantime, Ace.
Dude, where's the dog? Oh my God. Look at that. Look at that beautiful baby. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. You're a star, baby. You're a star. So I did want to touch on, we have a graphic we're going to throw up right here. We have emo night, Valentine's emo night, which is super fun. Do you want to tell us a little bit about these emo nights that you've been doing?
Well, there's so many emo nights now. There used to just be this one emo night, and then there was another emo night, and then there was and now it's like blown up, and there's a whole, like, there's 10 emo nights for every one emo night now, and they keep calling me. And I was reluctant to do the first time they called me. I was like, I don't know, I'm a guitar player from a band. It seems kind of weird that I'm going to go. I mean, I do DJ sets and stuff, but I was like, this is going to be weird. Is it going to be sad that I'm going to just get up there and like play a song by our band and play a song by Jimmy Eat World, but like not with my instrument on? And then I did it, and I swear, like, it felt like I was playing a show. I was connected to the crowd. The crowd appreciated it. And Sugarcult's not playing shows, kind of indefinitely right now. So it was like, I still just like love the like connection with an audience and with fans. And so it was just like, it was like the way I could kind of do it in a way that felt like was appropriate, rather than like, hey, come see my solo project where I'm not going to play any Sugarcult songs. It was more like, I'm going to go out there and celebrate our band, celebrate the time period that our band was like mostly around during. And, so they keep calling me, and I keep showing up. And so I'm doing a bunch of them, as it turns out. I'm doing a bunch of them in like the next couple of weeks. I've got like surrounding Valentine's Day. There's this promoter who decided to do one in LA, in I think it's Palmdale, and in Bakersfield. So they're like February 9, 10, and 11. And I think if you go to my Instagram, just Marko DeSantis, I think they shared the post with me. You can find it there. Look at these things. And it should be fun. And I'm doing another one in March, you see right there. And this is a whole different promoter who's putting this together with a band that literally is a My Chemical Romance tribute band.
Oh, wow.
You've been around forever when people start to like form tribute bands of bands that you used to remember being like baby bands, but yeah, trip out. So there's supposed to be a really good My Chemical Romance tribute band, and I'm going to do a DJ set, and just, for me, it's just fun. It's just a chance to like go out there, and, I love meeting people who come up to me now and go, dude, when I was like 15, I saw your band, and now I'm like growing up and I have kids or whatever. And we, we ordered the Sugarcult onesie off of your website. And I'm like, it's just cool. It's a trip. And again, it doesn't make me feel old, because I've just basically been 17 my entire life. I was 17 before I was even 17. I was 17 when I was 11, and I was 17, and I've been 17 ever since. You know, you grow and you evolve, but you never throw, like I said, you never sort of like get rid of the like romance of it all. You have to keep the romance alive.
True.
Amen. That's so true. 17 forever. Yeah. Okay. So before I let you guys go, because I feel like I've kept you guys for so long, controversial question, because you did mention these are Valentine's Day shows. How do we feel about candy hearts? Do we like them? Are we pro candy hearts? Or are we anti candy hearts?
Ace, you want to go first on that one?
I'm for them. I have a giant sweet tooth, so anything that's not just basic chocolate, I'm into.
Interesting.
Like, if it's sugar and it's like a fun color, then I'll probably eat it.
But are you not into chocolate specifically?
I like a Snickers or a peanut butter cup, but if it's just a bar of plain chocolate, I don't want that.
Okay.
Wow.
See,
I like to think of myself as being in sort of like this like a sugar cult.
See what you did there. Why haven't we made Sugarcult branded candy hearts that say like our song? We should have one that says like bouncing off the walls.
I would buy that.
I'm gonna try to do that. But I'll tell you, like I love chocolate, but I'm probably more into like savory and salty things. I'm not like total sweet tooth, but I've never liked the taste of candy hearts because I just feel like they're kind of chalky.
They're chalky.
You know, they always felt kind of chalky, and like they felt like when I was growing up, you get like those candy hearts, and they literally felt like they had been like the same like. You know, like they're just rolling out the same stock that they've been putting out since like 1977.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had like 20-year-old candy hearts, and you're like, they always tasted a little stale. And I really like the powdery feeling of them. But I've always loved the aesthetic, like I like the look of how like the printing is on it. And I love the little boxes that they come in, and like, you know, I would use them as like decorations, but not actually eat them.
I'm the same. Aesthetically, very pleasing. Taste-wise, all for you, Ace. You can have all of the candy hearts.
You can have them all.
You can have
new old stock vintage candy hearts coming your way in the mail.
Marko, this has been such a joy. You just radiate the most wonderful, beautiful energy. And Ace, thank you so much. This is like so great. Thank you.
Of course.
Dude, I thank you so much. And like, I was so stoked to have Ace here, except for I feel bad because I just like yammered on forever. And I wanted to hear some of Ace's stories. And Kid Cadet, I've never met you in person, but this is so rad. Like that you're doing this. This is such a cool thing.
It was born during those crazy couple of years of our life, and somehow it's still going, and I get to meet incredible people like you, and I met Ace through Talkulture as well, and yeah, it's been fun.
So Ace, you're in, am I allowed to say where the Batcave is? You're in Nashville.
Yeah, I've been in Nashville for about 2.5 years, and Kid Cadet, you're in Florida, yeah?
I'm in Hollywood, Florida, yeah.
Oh, okay.
The other Hollywood.
That's so rad, and I'm in LA, but that's awesome. I've always liked like sometime like if you can find like some like don't spend a lot of money, but if you can find like a sticker or something, like I would love to have something because I'm such a weirdo collector, like that says like Hollywood, Florida, and then I want one that says Paris, Texas. Like I want to collect all the like other, you know, like there's Hollywood, the Hollywood most people know, and then there's Hollywood, Florida. There's Paris and there's Paris, Texas. Like I just love the idea of that. So rad.
Oh, done. I'll get you a postcard, whatever you want, Marko. It's
like,
on.
To put it in perspective, like the I don't know, the idiosyncrasies or eccentricities of my collection ideas. Like my friend's husband is a singer of a really big Russian punk band called Naive. Like they were like a punk band before the revolution even happened. So they've been like a punk band from back when you could get arrested for singing anti-government songs, and they're still around. They're like, you know, they're like the No Effects of Russia or something. But anyway, he lives in my hometown now because he's married to my friend. He lives in Santa Barbara, but he was going back to Russia. And I was like, dude, whatever you have to do, the one thing, because he's like, you know, do you want something for your, you know, as a souvenir? I was like, dude, all I want is a cup from the like Russian version of Starbucks. Have you seen that? Like Starbucks, because, you know, once the Ukraine invasion happened, we like, Starbucks moved out. Like a lot of American countries just like moved out as a sort of like, you know, protest to Russia. And so Russia took the old Starbuckses that were there, like the buildings, and they made their own company called like Stars Coffee. And they have like a fake Starbucks logo kind of, but it's called, so I was like, just get me like a paper cup from there. And that's the only like souvenir I want.
I love
like that's
it.
the kind of shit I like to collect. Just weird shit from around the world. You know?
Okay, I'll remember that next time I'm traveling.
Yeah, and I'm gonna see what I can.
When I was in Japan, I bought that red bookshelf right there. I was in Japan and I found it in the store and I bought it, and I knew we were going to be back in Japan. I couldn't carry it back with me, but I knew we were going to be back there like 2 months later. So I just like literally, the Japanese are so honest. Like in America, they would have thrown it out, but I went to like the hotel to like the bell desk, and you can like check your luggage, you know? So I checked it and I got the little tag and I kept it in my wallet. And then 2 months later, when I went back to Japan, I went back to that bell desk and I handed the thing and they're like, you know?
And it was still there?
That's awesome.
I was like, thank you. And I like brought it home with me because I had like brought too many bags with me. So I needed to like wait till I didn't have too many. Otherwise I would have to pay like as much as that thing costs just to baggage charge. But yeah, so funny. Everything has a story. Everything has a story.
Oh my gosh. Well, we have to do this again and again and again and again.
Let's do it again sometime.
Let's do it. Before we let you go, Marco, I'm going to go over our upcoming guest that we have coming up, which is so crazy that next week is already February. Oh my gosh. Okay, so next Tuesday we have the wonderful Duncan Sheik. I'm obsessed. Love him so much. Next Thursday we have David Josephsberg, who was just in Beetlejuice on Broadway. Casey Jost is coming back. I think it's like his, oh my gosh, like 10th time on here. He's from Impractical Jokers. We also have Matt Novetsky from Icarus Bell and Blue October and all of the wonderful things. And Marco, thank you so much. This has been such a joy.
Me and Ace will fight all of those guys at There's Lava on the Floor, naked, anytime. Bring it, Duncan Sheik.
The challenge has been set.
Wow, I'm going to play that for him too. That's how we're going to open. We're like, this.
No way. Much love.
Well, this has been so much fun. And for everyone watching, thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you guys real soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Marco.
Woo, woo.